JB, this is not, our setting for this show. The setting's actually going to be your kitchen in just a couple of minutes. I'm just going to jump right into your screen, basically, and we'll go downstairs to the kitchen. Well, actually, okay, folks, here's what happened. Last week I was in Florida, and we did a show, and literally minutes after I left, and we were talking about Fisher. You'll see what that is in a minute, okay, and all that stuff. But here's the whole thing. Fisher, we said, Coach Vosberg has, left Fisher. There's no replacement named. And then Ed Raby gets named literally minutes after I left.
4 minutes
and then
after Frank leaves.
And then we already were trying to get a Coach Blumenauer interview, new Cortland head coach, former Franklin Marshall head coach. And so we're going to have another show drop on Thursday of this week, with interviews with those two new head coaches at their respective new schools. So stay tuned for that. So any references we're making that seem old in this show, just understand that this was slightly old material, not really that old. And there have been also other head coach changes named in the meantime that might not be reflected in this show. We're not trying to, be mean or, ignore other changes out there. So just roll with it. We got some great content in this show, and so let's take me from here back in your kitchen.
Yeah, look at that.
Who knew?
Good to see you back in Florida, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you. But, I was supposed to be here last Thursday on your birthday. Your birthday. And
30, big number, yeah.
39, yes, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay.
Okay, yep, got it. Well, so I feel bad. So I want to come bearing some gifts because of why I missed it in the first place. We were getting ready for a big flag football tournament in South Florida.
Okay, what do we got here?
So first off, we've got a challenge coin for you. I don't know if you collect them, but this is our Florida Sunshine Cup 14 and South Florida Flag Football League challenge coin. You can flip this or hit somebody over the head with it and probably kill them.
So in the future, in season 18 of the show, when I do this, that means I'm going to be challenging.
A challenge coin. Okay, I see what you're doing.
The mayor, unless I'm like, wait a minute, Frank. Okay, cool, thank you.
Here you go. Put it back in your case there.
Right.
Yeah,
very nice.
Okay, also, how we mark our rush box for flag football is with a hockey puck, and we also have the same emblems on our hockey puck. So there you go, a little paperweight for you.
All right, cool. Thank you, sir.
And a T-shirt from our Florida Sunshine Cup 14, size large, because you told me you're not quite down in the weight yet.
XL, it might have been a little better, but I think this looks like it's running big. So
it does.
It'll make me look all pumped up, too.
Don't dry it on high heat, okay?
Okay.
There are little hints from Heloise here.
Yeah, I guess it'll fit.
Okay, but for those of you that are going to accuse me of giving him gifts from something that didn't cost me anything, I did take him to lunch before we air this.
Yeah, that wasn't cheap either, so thank you very much. Very, very kind of you.
A little Italiano down the street. It wasn't bad. A little chicken marsala for me. You had a little salmon.
Yeah.
And who cares? I'm thinking out there. Yeah. Besides, we're going to talk a little football, past, present, and future coming up here. And the future, possibly the NESCAC, will be involved in that discussion as we will talk to three fine gentlemen of the NESCAC who are trying to get themselves and their, let's say, colleagues of the NESCAC into the playoffs finally.
Playoffs?
I know. Here we are, still in season 17 of In the Huddle. Okay, JB, as we kind of teased out there, we're going to talk to three fellows from the NESCAC, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that when we get to that segment. But again, playoff possibilities thanks to the Ivy League making the move. Yeah. Thanks to us maybe poking the bear a little bit a couple times.
It maybe shouldn't have taken the Ivy League to get this ball rolling. They could have done this independent of that, but it certainly helped.
Absolutely. So. I think it spurred even the creation of this group in the first place.
Absolutely.
So there you go. Also, we're going to talk about the Stagg Bowl a little bit coming up in just a few minutes here, and what it all means after it's done, who's left, and what it means to the entire landscape of D3 coming up here. Got a couple of Twitter questions we'll get to. Also, coaching changes of note. I was literally
carousel is going.
Wow, you're literally going as a carousel in certain cases out there.
One school just announced literally an hour ago that we're taping this.
Yep. And also schedules. We'll be taking a look at one major schedule that we teased that we might reveal not that long ago, and we'll get that up there as well. And finally, our way too early predictions for 2025 coming up as well. So let's start here. We'll pop up the scoreboard again from the Stagg Bowl that you and I attended, and we didn't go too deep into the after effects of things. We looked at the season in general, but now Luke Lanin as coach, he might have been a coach for all we know.
Hopefully, maybe a quarterback in the UFL for the Renegades. We'll see,
or more perhaps down the line. I mean, he's worthy of going pro, I think, in even a greater capacity. But that's a whole other story for another day. But you lose quarterback there. Quarterback situation in Mount Union is unclear currently, as graduation and transfer scenarios have occurred there, it looks like. So what happens here? Yes, you can still have a great team without your quarterback, and that happens in a lot of schools. But it's definitely a change. Do you think this opens the door for schools other than Mount Union and North Central in 2025 to perhaps get to a Stagg Bowl? How does this change the landscape in your mind for next year?
Well, I mean, I think in the case of North Central, I mean, Lennon is maybe the all-time greatest Division III quarterback we've ever seen from a statistical perspective. I mean, the win-loss record, only 2 losses in 59 games. I mean, you'd probably have to go back to some of the Mount Union teams when they had those, multiple 15-0 seasons for anything approaching that. But set the passing touchdown record. He said, set all these records. That's going to be hard to replicate. And then there's also a lot of these, these fifth-year COVID seniors that we're not going to have anymore. I mean, I guess there's still technically a chance for some guys that will be medical red shirts or what have you. But the whole, fifth-year thing is finally over. Maybe that means we kind of go back to the way things were before COVID, or maybe these 5 years have given programs like the Cortlands, the Grove Cities, the Johns Hopkins that are trying to make that next step, see what they need to do to be like the North Centrals and the Mount Unions of the world. And so we could see some different names. We kind of saw UMHB, who we thought in the preseason would be better than they ultimately were from the season before. They did have some rough games with a new quarterback, but they kind of started to just keep getting better and better.
Jake Wright, definitely was commanding the field by the end of that season in the postseason too.
Yeah. And with some of the graduations at Hardin Simmons, I mean, the Crusaders could be back in front. I mean, the ASC is still
I was just going to say, you bring up 2 ASC teams, and if you go to Corey Hoag's, Dave Campbell's Texas football article he just released, I think on the 17th officially, you get a good reminder of the future of the ASC. Is this the swan song for those 2 schools just mentioned there, Hardin Simmons and Mary Hardin Baylor? Because the thought is the other 2 schools, the East Texas Baptist and McMurray, they can, pop, or excuse me, I said McMurray. Howard Payne could bounce out there and go elsewhere, or maybe to join McMurray elsewhere.
SCAC, I mean, there's other locations possible.
But the 2 that we just mentioned, he goes in depth about the murmurs about nobody wanting to play the 2 purple teams to get into the playoffs possibly. But with NPI, maybe even a 3rd place team inside the ASC could get in there. He said that millions of dollars were offered to certain schools, just need 2 schools with the current Baptist 4, as he calls them, to complete the ASC for competition in playoffs and getting that slot in the future, assuming it stays at 6 as the threshold for teams in there. This will be interesting to watch. We don't know where this one is going. It doesn't look great, no doubt, but it could turn around. We'll see what happens. But this could be a swan song. This could be where Mary Hardin Baylor and Hardin Simmons just leave it all out in the field and really make a push here to A, both get into the playoffs, and B, actually dominate in those playoffs. And with what we brought up here today is the leader of North Central and Mount Union maybe having some growing pains here now for the next season. This might be the time to slot. But on the flip side, Brock Rudder won a Stagg Bowl.
Yeah.
Luke Lanen comes in and takes over from Brock Rutter.
He did pretty good.
Oh, yeah. But that's the point, that next man up sometimes is the correct answer, and that maybe they won't miss a beat there. We'll see what happens. Any last thoughts on Stagg Bowl and what I sort of foretells here, maybe?
Well, I think that, we saw that the 40-team tournament worked. There were a few things that maybe, we'll get into later on and sort of coulda, woulda, shoulda done better. But for the most part, the increased access was great. We saw some teams make it further into the tournament than we thought they might. And although we kind of got a game that was a repeat of the Stagg Bowl from 2 years before, it was still a great tournament. It was a great season. And we got a great championship game. I mean, obviously, North Central kind of pulled away there at the end. But, at one point in time, it was, a one-score game late in the third quarter. So I think we got what we kind of signed up for. And I thought the venue in Houston was outstanding. I would love to see a similar situation maybe just down the road here at either Camping World or the Orlando City Stadium. I don't think we'll see a Stagg Bowl in Florida, but you can dare to dream.
Bradenton in the old days.
Yeah. So you never know.
Well, let's go to a couple Twitter questions because it seems to be the right time based on what the questions we're asking here. Rambo's Carving Knife asks the question essentially, things we would have changed in 2024. Yeah. Obviously, the NPI, and more on that in our next question, probably coming up here, and the way it was postured, and the way to change it for next year in the same way now, because we're stuck with it in this way. Mm-hmm. But also, let's see. I would change the way they bracketed things. I still, to this day, the Cortland North Central quadrant didn't make any level of sense.
Yeah.
And, it's funny. You get these questions even in flag football when you do brackets, because we have cities send multiple teams and people are on me in either direction about don't schedule the same city in the same bracket against each other in the first round. And yet, there are other people that don't believe in that. But I get the point. But then on top of what we said about the Cortland North Central situation, what I just brought up is more akin to the John Carroll Mount Union situation, the Mary Hardin Baylor Hardin Simmons situation, guaranteeing at least one game for these teams to not be against teams they played earlier in the season. Avoid the rematches in the first two rounds when it involves those pigtail games, as Logan calls them, there in the wrestling parlance, because of the implications. We have 40 teams now. We can do better with this bracket in avoiding this stuff, and we didn't do it there.
Well, I'll start off on the other half of what Rambo asked, which was, what do we love about the 2024 season?
Oh, good point. Yep, sorry.
And, I really enjoyed the Susquehanna run. I thought that was fantastic. To see them go to St. John's and win that game the way they did was pretty amazing.
And then to see even that game against Bethel at home, what a wild game. Glad I was there.
Johnny on the spot over here with the with the video that proved that, yes, Josh Ehrlich did, cross the plane. And, speaking of teams that maybe we're seeing more in the national conversation, it could be the Riverhawks. We'll see. They've really come a long way, and they had a historic year.
Tough losing a Kyle House, among others out there. Yeah,
for sure. They'll need to reload in places, but, then they have, guys like Rashawn Lamons, who as freshmen just come out and like one of the best players in the country. And I think also a story that didn't maybe get as much coverage or maybe respect as I think it deserves now. And looking back, the job that James Ranello did for Johns Hopkins this season was unbelievable. I mean, that guy probably didn't. I haven't looked at the all-region teams on D3Football.com. I know he didn't make any of the All-American teams, but he was, this close to beating Mount Union on the road in, cold, windy, terrible conditions. And he played his butt off this season. And what an amazing job for a guy who's basically kind of a career backup, to an All-American caliber Bay Harvey.
Yep.
And we probably didn't realize, or give this kid much credit. So that was one of the things I loved about this past season. And, the things I would change, I think you covered most of them. I think the good thing about NPI was some of the transparency, like when we realized that we had the pairings like the day before.
Yeah. So 8 p.m. It's like, oh, it's final.
Oh, okay. So
let's go.
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, I would say that for the most part there weren't anything I would say really negative in my opinion. For the most part, we had good games. Not really, I guess you could say the end of the Bethel Susquehanna game did give some people agita about the holding call, and do you let the refs decide everything and da 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 da.
The DePaul situation too.
They kind of scored a touchdown, but not really, or those kinds of things were a little problematic, but they wouldn't necessarily change the whole script. So
one other thing I liked, since I didn't hit that on mine, was just getting around the country as much as I was able to this year. Hopefully we get this guy to do the same as he goes empty nest soon, hopefully. And gets the opportunity to see more of you out there. And we get to bring you that first person coverage. What is it, the college football road trip guy?
It's number 100 for him at the Stagg Bowl.
The interactions, and I think I said in our last show, but I said, hey, I only did 24 games. You make what I did look like child's play. But at the same time, we're bringing you the storyline. He's bringing you kind of the venue behind the scenes.
It's a social media thing.
For us, we concentrate on trying to give you. You can't be everywhere in Division III, that's for darn sure, but we try to give you the key stories. I mean, I got to the NESCAC for the first time and began stating something that became highly relevant by the end of the season in the end. So, the storylines we follow and sometimes we get in front of in these different things. And so that was one of the things I enjoyed, was just being such a part of that season, not to be in front of it, but to sort of shed the spotlight in those areas where I think we did a great job trying to make, the important stuff indeed important enough to the entire country to understand what it all meant at the end of the day. So that was a lot of fun for us as well. So third division, how do we get rid of MPI? You don't this year, that's for sure.
Nope.
But it's going to come down to coaches raising their voices and ADs raising their voices enough. Look, there's no doubt. Everybody understands that there is no reward right now for playing tough teams. And this is going to make scheduling a complete debacle for the teams like Mary Hardin-Baylor and Hardin-Simmons that are maybe going to need 6 non-conference games in some form or another, or have to double up on round robin forever at this pace if they can stay with an AASC model. But we'll see. But North Central, Wisconsin-Whitewater, Mount Union, they don't necessarily want to play each other head-to-head in the season, but they're almost being forced to do it in a way that doesn't help the entire crux of Division III football. I'd love to see a top 20 team take that risk for a top 5 team on their schedule and be rewarded for that risk. Okay? Yeah, if they win the game, they get something for it, but guess what? The odds of it, the cost-benefit analysis you do as a coach and an AD right now in scheduling games doesn't make it worth it. I still have to do the math for Coach Spencer. I got you. I know you want to see my math on this and everything else, so I will get that out soon.
Well, the irony is that we have seen a few schedules drop, and I think we have one to talk about in this show, but there are some teams, and keep in mind a lot of these games were booked like 4 years ago. So, but we have Wheaton going to Mount Union in week 1 this fall. I mean,
kudos to Wheaton for this one.
Yeah, I mean, let's say if they lose to North Central again, 8-2, we've seen is not a guaranteed. Maybe it gets you into the Isthmus Bowl, but it may not get you into the playoffs.
Nope.
We have teams like Grove City who just released their schedule. They're playing Mountain Union. They're opening at Cortland in week 1. I mean, so some teams are like really going for it, but I think these games also could have been scheduled a while back. And now, in the day of NPI, you might look back on it like, oh, crap, maybe we shouldn't have done that. But it is what it is.
Yeah, at least one of those Mount Union games probably wasn't scheduled because of the John Carroll situation.
Yeah, that's fair.
So somebody knew, at least one team knew what they were doing in doing this, or at least
Grove City could have seen, Carnegie Mellon drop off their schedule and like, oh, we've got an opening. Well,
yeah, but who wants to play Grove City right now?
Yeah, well, Mount Union does.
Yeah.
So.
And there you go. But that's a great game. Plenty of good stuff out there, sure. But in the long run, the reward is not there. You're not going to see interregional matchups of, let's say, flying out from Region 1 down to Region 3 like we've seen, or 2 to 6, or things along those lines. It's just not there. So eventually it's going to take, I think, the coaches and the athletic directors to say out loud, math doesn't tell the entire story when you only have 9 or 10 results to look at. Point differential is going to have to become a role at some point if you're going to only rely on numbers. It's just not fair to have certain things like a 1-point loss to a, really top team mean virtually the same or less than basically a win by 100 versus, or a 1-point win, we'll even say, to make comparisons here, to a bottom level team.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not good math. Okay, subjectivity, people don't want it. They want the transparency. Well, watch what you wish for sometimes, because I think too much transparency is forcing a bad system on us. And so if this doesn't rectify at a certain point, folks need to kind of go like this and say, maybe other sports where you have more results, this is going to work in, but football, there's just no compilation of math you can use to make this the only judgment of how these teams are going to be seeded and selected, or vice versa in this situation.
Yeah.
So, thanks for the questions. Obviously, we'll whenever we're getting ready to go on, we're going to send out the question requests from you folks, and make sure again that you get this show spread out there for folks that don't know about us. Still plenty of people that don't, so that they too can get their questions answered along the way. Coaching changes of note.
Bit of a list here.
Got lots of paper in front of me on this one. Okay. So we're gonna kind of go a little fast on the speed round. The most popular one was, or in terms of notoriety, Kurt Fitzpatrick leaving Cortland for Colgate. We obviously covered that in real time when it was happening, and it's going to be, I believe, head coach Tom Blumenauer from Franklin and Marshall replacing Coach Fitzpatrick. Yep. The Diplomats, a team that was good, no doubt, in the Centennial, and a coach that definitely represented well in that time he was head coach, but an Ithaca guy.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting. Like, how did they let a bomber take over? I mean,
but with the Southern Tier New York connections, obviously. But a lot of people are out there like, I don't know, how did this one work exactly? Yeah. I guess he's going to bleed red now, which might rub some people very interestingly when it comes to Cortica at the end of the season. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, it's interesting to see a guy with a sort of a Centennial NESCAC pedigree end up at a state university like Cortland. I mean, it's a very different profile, but given the Ithaca ties and this, like you said, sort of that southern upstate New York connection. Young guy, he's done a nice job. I think he won 21 games in his 3 seasons as a head coach at F&M. Not bad. I think brings an interesting kind of background and perspective to the table that's a little different than what we normally see at that school. So time will tell. They've got a crazy home opener for themselves against Grove City, one of the PAC co-champions and one of the best teams we've seen in the last couple of years. So he's going to have a sort of a trial by fire in week 1, but like he said, he thought this was the best job in the country, and he was excited to get it. I think the folks in Cortland are excited to have him there, and I'm sure he's going to build a great staff, and it'll be interesting to cover Coach B and see how it goes. Yeah, absolutely. Now, he left Franklin Marshall. Michael Phelan is going to be in that realm, or in that role, I should say, for F&M as his replacement now, so congratulations to him. Then another little bit of a, literally the carousel of things here we talk about. Matt Nardo, he is the new head coach of Muskingum. And he left as head coach of Bluffton in that situation. He'd only been at Bluffton for like a year or 2. I think 3, maybe, or something like that. Sure. Replaces Eric Iuter, I believe it is, who becomes the head coach of Olivet, replacing Dan Musilowicz. Really interesting play or interplay there, recycling of coaches into different spots and whatnot. And, hey, congratulations to all of them for, landing something here when it comes down to it. Yeah. But at the same time, it's interesting because you've got a lot of guys out there who love head coaching opportunities and may not have gotten the chance yet, a lot of coordinators and whatnot. But to see kind of that carousel of head coach scenario, it sort of tells you that they want more so right now in schools like those.
the steady hand mentality instead of taking the risk that maybe we've seen more schools take over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of risk taking to go into the coordinator realm to grab new head coaches out there. So I found that whole thing very interesting, how the carousel worked there.
Yeah, and not to spin us off into snooze land, but when you think in this sort of post-COVID world where we've had colleges close, we're talking about this enrollment cliff potentially in the next couple of years, having a guy who can go out and recruit 25 to 50 new freshmen every year, paying customers, and retain them, and the tuition dollars and all this type of thing. At the end of the day, they're nonprofit organizations, but this is a business and they need to stay open, and the best way you do that is you get the students in. And so guys with that head coaching track record who know how to recruit, bring people in, that's an important part of the job description for these roles. And so as long if they have that on their resume, colleges are going to come calling.
Let's go speed round on the rest. Brett Elliott, the former Linfield quarterbacking phenom, is the new head coach of Lewis & Clark, replacing Joe Bushman. Frank Calapretti left Worcester for his high school's alma mater football job. High school alma mater's football job, I should say.
Okay.
And I did not see a replacement yet for him. Casey Goff is the new St. Vincent's head coach, replacing Aaron Smetanka in that role. You've got Mike Murray leaving Elmhurst as head coach to return to Illinois Wesleyan as defensive coordinator. And then the new head coach replacing Norm Ash is Jared Williamson. So interesting to leave a head coaching position to come back home per se as a coordinator in that role. But hey, obviously that's home in a lot of different ways to Mike Murray. But congratulations, Coach Williamson, and having somebody like Mike Murray there is a great start to steady the ship after losing a guy like Norm Ash in that.
Absolutely.
Spencer Kreis, the new George Fox head coach, replacing Chris Casey. Chris Critch left Laverne as head coach. No replacement seen quite yet. Maine Maritime replaces their head man with Nick Sheehan as new head coach as they prepare to get restarted up here fully. Mark Carr retired as the Hartwick head coach after 22 years. No replacement name that we've seen yet. Kind of late in that game, I'll be honest with you for this.
Same thing for St. John Fisher.
Yep, St. John Fisher loses Paul Vosberg to retirement. Let's see, we also had Mike Leonard, who had left Franklin as head coach in 2019. He's coming back as head coach, replacing Alan Hensel. Mike Leonard was the winningest head coach for Franklin, so trying to, I guess, get it back to where he had it type mentality. Tom Kaufman is the new Marietta head coach, replacing Andy Waddle after his great season. He goes to Valpo as head coach now. Sean Weaver, the new Albright head coach, replaces Isaac Collins. Hiram made a leadership change, leading to Jack Razinski being out as head coach. I believe they are still searching there. I did not see any updates there. So quite a bit.
New coach for them.
Yep, quite a bit of stuff moving around there, indeed, on the carousel. Which leads me to ask you the question quickly here. You're at AD right now. You brought up the whole question of recruiting new players and getting the enrollment done. But, you look out in that realm, young head coach versus old head coach type mentality. We've seen the young ball coach still win out generally. But, do you think we're going to see an ebb and flow in that a little bit to get steadier hands with the age and maturity question out there? Or have the Kurt Fitzpatricks completely turned this thing on in their head? And, even Brad Spencer in terms of his age and whatnot. 40s and under are going to be it pretty much, do you think, moving on?
I think we're definitely headed towards that, youth movement. The current generation, has grown up with, these things in their hands. They're attached to social media. They're posting their highlights. They're doing TikToks and all the other stuff. So it is a younger man's game in certain respects. So I think we will start to see a little bit of that sort of youth movement. I think at least in Division III, there's still certain kind of throwback sort of offense and defensive systems that are still in play. Like, we've got, obviously the Springfields of the world running the triple option. We've got other schools that are doing different variations of sort of more old-fashioned type of offensive attacks. But then again, you look at teams like North Central and Mount Union who make it to the national championship game, they are very much, spread, interesting play calling, pro level type of, or D1 college, whatever you want to call it, much more advanced play calls, much more advanced routes and, schemes and all this kind of thing. So, I think that will lean in more. And, Frank and I aren't getting any younger. We got some more gray hairs. All these new coaches are all younger than us. So it's like, oh man, we're probably aging ourselves out too.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. But before we age out fully, we want to see the NESCAC in the playoffs. I'm going to ask you to get the three positions real quick for me so we can identify positions of players that joined us here, because we have a full gamut of guys that are basically the NESCAC Football Players Association that they've created. This was, again, a recent creation thanks to the Ivy League mainly saying, hey, we're going to go to the playoffs. And everybody looked to NESCAC and said, hey, your turn. What are you going to do here? After in October, before we knew about the Ivy League, I went out to my first set of, my first NESCAC game and sort of got my voice involved, and I thought I would never be invited back to anything NESCAC, and I haven't quite yet. But
well, we had a number of videos go viral last year. I mean, I think the one from Salve was like 400,000 views.
Yeah, and then some, because Facebook, somebody's pawned it off to Facebook and it got over 1 million views.
Yeah. So, but the one about the NESCAC did generate over 50,000, and I think when it comes down to the equity piece of it, that got a lot of, ears perked up and said, okay, wait a minute, so what's going on here? So yeah, we had the chance to talk to three of the guys that are on this Players Association board. One of the founding members is Vaughn, I think Selicki or Selick, maybe I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but he's a junior place kicker from Tufts University. And then we had Jack Lucido, a junior, a wide receiver from Wesleyan that won the NESCAC this past year with an 8-1 record.
Yep.
They would have been a playoff team with that bid. And then finally, last but not least, Aiden Moss, the sophomore quarterback for Middlebury football. And so we had an interesting conversation with these guys to sort of see where things are now as they petition to try to get themselves into the 2025 Division III national playoffs.
Guys, thanks for joining us. And we'll start with Vaughn here. Vaughn, why don't you tell folks what your organization is, what it's about here, how did it even start, right, and form and all that good stuff. Tell people about yourselves at this point, about what the cause is here that you guys are fighting for.
Yeah, definitely. We are the NESCAC Football Players Association. We were formed by myself and the other two members at Tufts. We kind of saw the Ivy League change their rules, allowing the Ivy League to go to the playoffs for the first time in their history for football. And the Ivy League and NESCAC have always had the same football rules. So we are currently the last D3 team in the country for football to not go to the playoffs. And based on that Ivy League change, and obviously a lot of support around the league from all the guys in our coalition, we came together and have been petitioning the NESCAC to change that rule to allow us to compete in the D3 playoffs this year. We have a formal proposal that will be sent to the league in the next probably week at least. And we have a public petition out there to help raise awareness. And we've created some social media accounts, just NESCAC Football PA. And been sharing kind of our work. We've been covered on a few news outlets, and we really just want the opportunity to compete, which is I think really what we all came to college to do at the beginning.
So just out of curiosity, Vaughn, did any of you guys happen to see Coach Chiavetti's retweet of Frank's post of basically saying, "Hey, this is something that should be addressed here. It's been too long." Or was it really the Ivy League thing that kind of opened the doors and really made this a possibility?
I think that for us, I mean, this has been something that's been talked about in the league for a really, really long time. I mean, even back as far back as I've talked to some alums who played here 10 plus years ago, and they were talking about going to the playoffs then. So I think there's always been support from the players and from the coaches. But I think that at least for us at Tufts, the Ivy League changing their rules was really, I guess, kind of something that we knew we could use to rally to finally get the rule changed. But like you said, there's a lot of support from I think the head coaches of almost every school I've spoken to, and obviously the players. So now our goal is just to have that support translate up into the presidents of the schools, so they can eventually say yes.
I want to go to Aiden and Jack here to a certain degree. We'll start with Aiden. Jack, we'll have you pipe in afterward. But I'm going to play devil's advocate. You guys know where I sit on this whole position in the first place with whether you should or shouldn't be able to go to the playoffs. But Aiden, Jack, people are going to say, look, what do you guys mean? You knew what you were getting into when you went to your respective schools. It wasn't going to be a playoff ride at all. Why are you suddenly all hell-bent on going to the playoffs? Aiden, what would you tell folks that say that to you? And then again, Jack, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, with the playoffs, we just want a chance to compete. We got a lot of good talent here. One of our linemen just here at Middlebury was actually invited and participated in the Shrine Bowl a couple of weeks back, and he did great there. And he's going to be looking to get into the NFL as well, and most likely going to get drafted. And so, we got a lot of dudes here, and we just want the chance to compete with everybody and show the talent that we got.
And Jack, what would you tell those folks that kind of question why you'd want to go here right now?
I'd say it's a pretty valid thing to say that we kind of we knew what we were getting into. We knew the NESCAC didn't participate in the playoffs, but especially with the Ivy League now having the opportunity to play in the postseason, I think that really just opened the door for us to make a really serious push. And so I think being those elite academic schools, I think really emulating what the Ivy League does, I think giving us that same opportunity is what we're asking for and pushing for.
Absolutely. And I don't know, for some reason, sometimes people think that we know stuff about D3 football. So we get these questions like, if there was a NESCAC team or teams, which, of course, these days with the way the MPI works, a one-loss team could definitely get in. Sort of how would you compare them to other teams in, let's say, Region 1 and 2? In this past playoff season, we saw some teams in Region 1 and 2 do pretty well. I'd imagine you guys watch the D3 playoffs. When you look at some of the teams that were out there, would there be kind of a comparison that you would make to like maybe a Hopkins or maybe a Muhlenberg from the Centennial or maybe a Hobart or Union from the Liberty League? Any places that you see the overlap of people are like, okay, well, if the NESCAC champions did get in, what would they look like, I guess?
Jack, why don't we start with you on that, if you could?
Yeah.
I think we're very comparable to schools like Hopkins and MIT and those other highly prestigious academic schools. I think the only argument really is that those schools are a little bigger than the NESCAC schools, but I really do believe that we have some of the best student athletes in the country, and with that, I think being given that opportunity to compete on the national level, I think we'd really be able to hang with a lot of teams and do really well.
Aiden, if I can, just staying on JB's question here, but elaborating a little bit. The 75 roster limit that we know about, some folks think would have to go to be competitive. Is that going to be any part of this discussion, do you think, or do you think that this limit is going to be okay to be competitive in those realms with the Hopkins, et cetera, out there?
Yeah, I'm not too worried about the limit. We got lots of good players on our team, and just because making us a high academic school, I don't think it takes anything away from our football ability. If anything, I think it just raises it. We run complex offenses and defenses. We got a lot of really smart players, and I think we're good to compete with any D3 school in the nation.
Vaughn, same general questions here. What is in essentially the proposal with respect to size of team or anything else? Is there anything that will be encompassed with those different points in there, or just even discussing the idea of maybe that's something to consider down the road? Where are you going to go with that kind of idea?
Yeah, definitely. I think that right now our proposal is for playoffs exclusively, because that's, I think, really our main goal right now. Obviously, coming in with playing more games or trying to change roster limits, things like that is something that that could be something in the future possibly. But currently right now, our goal is to get into the playoffs. I think that's the one thing that unanimously around the league is supported. I know that, maybe some coaches feel differently about playing more games or changing their rosters, but the playoffs is really just the president saying yes, because the NESCAC gets a bid every year. They just turn it down. So right now we're just focused on getting into the playoffs, just kind of trying to keep it concise. But obviously I think that, the things you touched on could be something in the future, but for now are kind of tabled because I think playoffs is what we're really hoping for.
So what's next for you guys? You mentioned that there will be this proposal that's going, kind of going to a committee or whomever, maybe it's the presidents of the conference next week. What are the next steps that we can look forward to in the coming weeks, months?
Vaughn?
Yeah, definitely. So we have a formal proposal that should be sent to the league in the next few days. And there's a president's meeting of all the presidents actually in Boston on April 3rd, and they will vote on a number of issues. But our goal is for that proposal to be on their tables April 3rd. And then one of the things that our coalition is working on right now is trying to get in touch with the ADs and presidents of all of our respective schools and pretty much, first of all, try and get it on their radar. And second of all, try and get them to say yes. I know that at least at Tufts, we have great support from our president and athletic director for what we're doing. And from talking with the rest of our guys, that seems to be definitely a very common thread. So our goal right now is to get the proposal officially, sent in, and then to work on raising awareness around it for that April 3rd meeting. Hopefully, April 3rd comes around, all the presidents walk in saying, hey, my guys have spoken to me personally at my school. I'm in support. And it passes April 3rd, and we go on with the offseason knowing that the NESCAC champion will get to compete on the highest level.
I'm curious if Middlebury Wesleyan have the same support from the key players, or if you've spoken to the president and athletic directors of both schools. Aiden, what's it like in your realm, and then Jack?
Yeah, I've had lots of conversations with our head coach and the athletic director as well, and I know that our athletic director has been in contact with the president, and they're on the same page, looking to push it through and want to do anything that they can do to help. And so right now, just the focus is on getting that proposal, which Vaughn is doing, and so yeah.
And Jack?
Very similarly, our head coach is 100% on board. Our AD, our president, everyone's 100% on board in getting us and pushing for us to get to the postseason. And I think that support is really hard to ignore once that gets to the president's meeting in April. So I think it's going to be hard to ignore all the support we have.
Now, whoever wants to answer this, just raise your hand a little bit, and I will call on you. Suddenly we went Socratic, I guess, here, but let's ask the questions. What have you heard from the power players at your schools as to why this hasn't happened yet? And it can't just be the Ivy League, because that just doesn't make sense to me. It seems like there's other things in play here. And what hurdles do you have to get over beyond the Ivy League mentality, do you think, that you've heard are the reasons or rationales for NESCAC not taking the playoff bid or accepting anything in terms of Pool C or anything else along the way? Vaughn, I see you kind of nodding there, so let me throw it to you first on this one.
Yeah, definitely. I think that historically, the main thing that's been cited is academics. Obviously, being in the NESCAC, we are an academics first, athletics second conference, much like the Ivy League, due to our similarities. So there was worries that competing in the playoffs could conflict with our finals season and might make academics dip, but kind of my retort and our retort to that is that there's plenty of high academic schools. We already touched on Hopkins, Carnegie Mellon, schools of that sort that do go to the playoffs. And I mean, Hopkins had a really deep run this year. And, if all their football players were failing their classes, they wouldn't be doing that. So I think that, having other high academic institutions competing and succeeding, at least in my eyes, makes that point maybe a little bit outdated. And I mean, a lot of the players that come to this league come because of the academic and athletic experience combined. So for 9 weeks a year, we're able to, juggle both. I think that all athletes will be willing to do that for one more week for the experience of a lifetime of competing on a national stage like the D3 playoffs are.
Yeah, and absolutely. And one of the things that we've been talking about and said from day one, I mean, when you look at every other sport, whether it's, men's ice hockey, women's lacrosse,
soccer,
you guys, your league dominates in Division III nationally in almost any men's and women's sports. And so I kind of always joked around that, you want to let, keep the NESCAC out. It's probably a good idea because once you let them in, man, they might be at the top of the class before you know.
Well, I was going to ask, and so Aiden, I'm going to throw this one to you. I'm going to give you the opportunity for some smack talk to the rest of the country since this may be happening sooner rather than later. How's the NESCAC going to perform against these schools and these teams? You have classmates at other schools from your high schools, I'm sure, that tell you all the time about their experiences and the competition level and everything else. How would you guys do, even with this 75-man roster, ultimately, in this type of scenario?
I think that we would do great. We have a super competitive league. It's kind of hard to compare and see how we would match up against other teams because we've just only played against these teams the entire time. But we got a lot of dudes in this league. Like I was saying, we got a dude going to the NFL, and we got plenty of other good players that have gone up to D1 levels. Tons of other schools, Tufts. We've had a quarterback and receiver last year that are both playing D1. And so, we got lots of talent, and we're ready to compete with everybody else.
Jack, if you get the opportunity in your tenure at Wesleyan to, suit up and go across the line of scrimmage with the guys in the playoffs, what's the first thing you're going to say? I mean, is there going to be a little smack talk about now you get to see what the NESCAC's about?
I would say I'm not the biggest smack talker, so I don't know if I would say too much. But in general, I think just putting the NESCAC on the map and really proving on a national level that we are one of the best Division III conferences in the nation. And so I think if we were given that opportunity, I think we would make really deep run because as Vaughn and Aiden have mentioned, we have a really talented league and we have a lot of guys who have had a lot of success.
Absolutely. So before we let you leave here, we want to give you an opportunity for any messaging and shout-outs at the same time. Normally we give our student-athlete guests an opportunity for shout-outs to family, friends, teammates, etc. But I also want to give you the opportunity to send a message out there to folks that want to know what they can do to help you as well. So we'll start with Jack. Go Jack, Aiden, Vaughn in this ending question and the shout-outs at the same time. Any messages you want to send out there to folks about what you're doing and how they can help and who's been there for you in the process already? Jack, go ahead.
I just want to shout out the Wesleyan football team for winning the first ever outright championship. So huge shout out to the Wesleyan football team for that. And I guess my take-home message would just be to support our cause. We have a lot of great reasons as to why we think we should be allowed to participate in the postseason. And so with that, I think understanding that anything helps, whether that's spreading the word or signing petitions or anything of the sorts that shows support for our cause, I think goes a really long way and really anything helps. So thank you to everyone who has supported us in our cause.
Aiden, you're up.
I would also like to just give a shout out to all my teammates, specifically the O-line. Can never show them enough love, but just like Jack was saying, just any support, petitions, spreading the word, anything will help.
And finally, Vaughn, who didn't get a chance to smack talk, although I can tell, despite looking like he's this angelic kind of guy, I have a feeling he can do it on the field. But nonetheless, Vaughn, any messaging and shout-outs you want to give?
Yeah, definitely. I think to echo the other guys, the support from the school and the other football players at Tufts has been great. Obviously, the two other members that are part of our coalition. And then I think kind of just to leave with a final message, I think it's an issue of equity. We want to compete, and I think that, not allowing us to is something that's really unfortunate. And we came to the NESCAC to be the best, academically and athletically. And I think that that's what the NESCAC stands for. That's what it represents. And for us to hopefully be able to bring that into line with the NESCAC standards of excellence in the academic and athletic realm is what we're fighting for. And at the end of the day, I hope they can see it the same way we do.
There's nothing that schools and the administrations of those schools hate more than hearing the words Title IX being thrown at them. But using the word equity is part of the Title IX mentality and mantra out there. And I said it back in October. I'll say it again now to the folks that are going to make the decisions. Don't run into a potential Title IX conflict here, because you could. And these guys deserve the opportunity, the equity, the entry, everything else that goes with it, for the Division III playoff slot that they earn each year, yet don't get the opportunity to take. I applaud what you guys are doing. You're using your voices and living up to the You Matter idea that we live by on this show. So thank you, and best of luck on what goes next, and keep us up to date so that we can inform folks. Maybe there are other things they can do along the way. So just let us know. And thanks to those guys for joining us. Well-spoken, great representatives for the schools. Should be proud as ADs and presidents of those schools to have them representing you in any way, shape, or form, whether or not it's a controversial issue. That's the whole thing. When it's a controversial issue, you want maturity leading that discussion. You don't want it to become a train wreck or off the rails. And they're maintaining that. They're being respectful in their media tour that they've been doing. Yeah. We wanted to show you the faces behind the names and voices there, as well as we normally do. We lost Aiden for a brief second there, but we got him back. Whoops. Yeah, I thought I did something to annoy him. He ran off or something, but it was too early in the interview for that to normally happen. No, but they were great guys and great representatives indeed.
And speaking of Middlebury football, there's a really good chance we could see one of the Panthers get drafted in this upcoming NFL draft.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because a lot of people are beginning to ask the question, why would NESCAC OLs, for instance, or any OL for that matter in Division III, get this level of attention suddenly? Ali Marpet started this whole thing.
10 years ago,
And then let's follow the line. Quinn Miners.
He's all-pro this past year for the Broncos, a playoff team.
And now, you see the Middlebury situation brewing there, and what is causing this in your mind? Because I know this question's been posed to other people there.
Well, I think, at the end of the day, to play offensive line in the NFL, I think back when Ali got drafted, he was 6'4", 310 pounds. He could lift a ton of weight. He ran basically a 5.0 40-yard dash at the combine. And, a part of his golden ticket was the fact that he got on enough scouts' radars and had the right representation. He trained with Chip Smith out of Atlanta, who is very well respected in NFL circles for training kind of the best in breed from a talent perspective. Kind of the right place, the right time. But at the end of the day, to be a lineman in the NFL, you have to have that size, the 6'4 plus, 300 plus pounds, be able to bench press 500, 600 whatever pounds, and where the Division III guys, I think, actually have an advantage. And you hear Tom Brady talk about this on talk shows and all this, the complexity of pass protection in the NFL play calling. You really need to be a smart guy to play offensive line.
Techniques that you're not used to and everything else.
So if, you could have a guy like an Ali Marpet who was only, 240 something pounds and 6'4" when he started college, but, with training and development. At one point, Ali told me his diet consisted of eating 10,000 calories a day to keep that weight up, and that's why.
It's like 4 times what I'm supposed to do.
Once he retired, he's now lost 100 pounds. He looks like a completely different guy. So, but yeah, if you do the eating, you do the training, you have the size and the strength, you have a better chance of making that jump as an O-lineman than you would maybe as a receiver or running back, where you have to have certain speed, hand size, arm length, all this other stuff. At the end of the day, it's just physical power. And if you can prove to a scout that you can take on a 300-pound edge rusher from the SEC, people are going to give you a chance.
Well put. I agree with you. It's one of those situations where I'm a big believer in smart guys being able to be quarterbacks. So this is why you look at the Zach Boys of the world who have a coaching mentality out there, or coach's mentality, and the
See
ability
the field better and differently.
and learn the techniques, absorb, grow, and whatnot. I think he can play at the next level based on that fact right there. We'll see what happens for him. Luke Lannon, same thing. Very smart guy.
Yeah,
and
like a
can pick it up.
4.0 student.
Yep, and that's the thing. Anybody can, lift weights, but not everybody can get to be a size of, the prototypical O-lineman or whatever have you inside the NFL. But when it comes to even skill positions, if you got an arm that can throw the ball well, and then it comes down to technique and education out there, football mentality, and all that stuff. So, good points, and we'll hope that more D3 guys get some attention. We're getting close to draft time, and so we'll see if we hear any rumblings of guys getting on the radar on a lot of these combines and whatnot we'll be seeing over the next 2 months.
If you're a D3 fan, don't forget to tune into the Canadian Football League. There's going to be a number of former D3 guys going out for that. I saw another one, the kid from Randolph-Macon just signed, I think, with the Winnipeg Bombers. Our one of our favorite quarterbacks from Texas signed with a team.
Tucker Horn.
Tucker Horn, yeah. So good luck.
Argo, right?
Yeah. Good luck to Tucker. And so, definitely look for those guys. Those games are going to be coming on in March and April and throughout the spring.
Schedules. We had hinted in our last show that we wanted to maybe reveal Carnegie Mellon's schedule, and Coach Larson said, "You know what, guys, we're going to let you do that." Ta-da. And so let's take a look at what I would call a schedule that I'm pretty impressed with, and for good reasons right now. And JB, as you can see on the screen, they are leading off against Chicago at Chicago on September 6th. Then, boy, look at this one. Yeah, no RPI here. This is Carnegie Mellon. So La Crosse going to another, smart kids school, per se, as we like to call them. But the 13th is home versus UW La Crosse. So another big road trip for La Crosse there.
Yeah, they're stepping up, man. That's impressive.
Give them credit for what they do there. And I think they learn well from that. Maybe that helps them go to the next notch this year. We'll see. Versus Barry, which is surprising because Coach K is a Grove City guy.
Yeah.
And yet they're going to play Carnegie Mellon before they play Grove City.
Yeah, maybe he didn't want to, either win or lose to his old school.
I don't know.
But yeah, that's a long trip though from Rome, Georgia, out to Pittsburgh. I mean, it's probably a flight. I don't think you want to bus that long, but that's a great matchup between the Vikings and the Tartans in Week 3. Then
they go to a Centennial schedule versus McDaniel at Hopkins on the 11th. That's a big game right there to start. Versus Gettysburg, then at Muhlenberg, never easy to play there. At Dickinson versus Franklin Marshall under new coaching tutelage there, and at Ursinus to end the season, which is also lately not an easy game.
Yeah, not too many teams have been beating the Bears at home, so they're tough out.
Also, I believe, are they not starting in like Spain or something?
That's right. They're doing a trip. They're going to be flying across the Atlantic to do a scrimmage against a Spanish national team or like a college level team. So this time of year, I'm sure the weather will be beautiful. Kind of low 70s, low humidity, and so that should be a fun adventure for the Tartans to do that. We've seen other teams like go to Ireland and other places. There's certainly plenty of D3 alums that are playing over in Europe now in various leagues. But the Tartans get the international trip. Enjoy the paella and whatever else you want to.
I think Carter St. John was telling us what was the last year about their trip overseas in on our shows last year. So
great opportunity to bond, especially this Tartan team is losing some really outstanding fifth-year super seniors.
Ben Mills.
Yeah, Ben Mills. So it's a great opportunity for them to kind of really pull together and get to know each other. It's going to be a different team this fall, but what a great schedule. I mean, geez.
That's one of many coming out right now, and I watch Twitter for our takes on schedules as we see more and more come out there. But for sure, we highlighted some of them on this show. There are many more to come, and again, we applaud taking the risks despite the MPI situation the way it is. And so I hope that you still do that down the line. but I understand and you understand if you don't, because you don't want to lose the chance for a playoff slot.
Yeah.
If you lose against, let's say you're in a tough conference and you might lose against a team in a conference, that second loss can be pretty much the death knell if the numbers don't line up right at that point.
I guess the only way out of that death knell is if you somehow manage to create a three-way tie like we saw with the SAA, where everyone finishes 8-2 with wins against the others, and it kind of buoyed them at the bottom of the MPI terrain and got them in the door. So
that's an interesting point right there for sure. Well, listen, we're almost at the 1 hour mark here, if we aren't already, and so let's talk finally about our way too early 2025 predictions. Who do you see as semifinalists? If you had to sit here right now and say who our semifinalists are going to be Final Four, name them.
Well, I wonder if we may finally see a representative from the best conference in the country, the WIAC, WEAC, whatever you want to call it. Is someone with a UW going to jump out of the pile? They've just have been, kind of stymied for years now, and so it's been a minute or so that we've seen one of the Wisconsin teams get back into the national semifinals. So given this year, I think with the changes, the lack of fifth-year seniors, I think some of that size and depth that they have, maybe they won't beat each other up as much, although we did see teams like Stout kind of come out of nowhere and surprise us. So it might still be a bad rough gauntlet, and you have to cross your fingers and hope that you get a good seeding. But I would like to say that one of the WEAC schools, WIAC, whatever we're calling them, makes it to the Final Four.
I'll give you that then. I'll match you on that one for sure. I think North Central's still going to make it in there. I still think that they have that power. I'm going to throw out Mary Hardin Baylor and say that I think they have a legitimate chance right now based on what we saw. The more transfers they're going to get in. I still think that there's probably the guys that think that they might go FCS, so the young guys coming in that have that cusp FCS ability and size and skill and all that stuff. So I think that is a real possibility there as well. That's three. Let's see. Who can I say my fourth? You know what?
Susquehanna again?
I was leaning there. I was thinking Landmark Centennial Zone as I'm thinking about the fourth team. I don't see why not.
Or Hopkins again, maybe.
That could be too. So somebody out in that Centennial Landmark context, I would feel would be a worthy fourth. So Susquehanna very well could be. Here comes the bulletin board.
I guess it depends.
It's tough because
they have a really tough schedule that I've seen some video of this kid who looks like the heir apparent at quarterback, but they also graduated some great all-time players like Tyler Echeverry. There were some guys on the offensive line. Right now, I mean, this is a way too early prediction, but I've been seriously talking to the mayor about if we're going to do a week one on site, that Wheaton Mount Union game could be it. And I'm really curious to see what this Raiders team is going to look like, because maybe they're a semifinalist caliber, they could repeat and kind of come back. But
you've never seen the machine in person, have you?
No, never.
In a regular season context.
Yeah, no. The Stagg Bowl was my first time, so I kind of want to get out to the hallowed grounds of Alliance, Ohio, and see for myself.
Maybe we can catch a pack game like Westminster or Grove City that weekend too, or something. We'll see how it lines
Thursday, up. Thursday, or maybe Heidelberg. You play on Thursday nights. Maybe we'll see it.
Coach Donaldson.
Yeah, come on, man.
Let's see. Also, MPI possibilities. Look, I think you brought up an interesting point about that merry-go-round we saw in the SAA situation. But it's not changing this year, folks. So it's just going to be
used to it.
The only question really for me is, will we see the 40th slot taken by essentially an NESCAC team or not?
I hope so. I think that would be great. I think, and it may not just be one, because there's the possibility you could have a 9-0 NESCAC champion and an 8-1 runner-up.
And people are going to be like, "What the hell is that?"
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, maybe an 8-2 team from a CCIW or a WIAC school gets ousted because, Trinity of Connecticut took your spot because they finished 8-1 and you finished 8-2.
Any other closing predictions, sir?
Closing predictions.
How many games are you going to get to?
Yeah, I would like to be, so it seems like this past couple of years I've made it to 3 in both 23 and 24. I made it to both Stagg Bowl games.
Regular season games, 3 regular seasons, yep.
So, yeah, I would like to try to make at least, I want to try to get to some regular season games in October and November. That would be cool. I've never really been able to do that.
Crux time, basically.
Yeah,
Yep.
we've had in the past, we used to do the whip around show, because there's always big games kind of hitting the calendar around week 9, week 8. Week 10, rivalry games, those kinds of things. So I'm hoping to make it out to a few of those. I might need to consult the mayor on winter clothing for the Stagg Bowl this year. It's going to be in Canton, Ohio.
I'll show you how not to use warmer socks or heated socks.
Well, it's funny. I keep having this ad on Facebook that's like for the vest that has the heating on the inside. Like, I might buy that because if it's 20 degrees...
People swear by those things, I hate to tell you.
I don't know, man. I might have to like hide out in the press box for this one. We'll see.
That Johns Hopkins Mount Union game was definitely interesting from a temperature perspective, folks.
Yeah, I'll never forget that picture of you just
frozen in the end zone.
Solid
in the end zone. But even in Houston, we thought we could get a warm game, and it ends up diving during that game like crazy after rain falling all day.
Chilly, yeah.
But anyway, great anecdotes we had from the season, but we got plenty more where that came from coming up in 2025. So let's see where this goes. We'll have more as we need to bring it to you throughout the season. Watch us on Twitter as usual, at D3FB Huddle, at Frank Rossi, and also on Instagram and Facebook, as you folks probably know by now.
And X.
Yep. So Twitter, X, whatever I think they call it. So look for us out there. Appreciate you joining us, and we will see you soon. Thanks for letting me crash your kitchen one more time, sir.
You're welcome. Hey, and thanks for the stuff.
A little swag for you there.
Don't forget, this is the challenge coin. You might be seeing this in season 18.
We'll see you, folks. Maybe still in season 17, maybe in season 18, depending on what we call things. But we'll see you nonetheless. Take care.